Good evening, this is Brass Tacks. I'm Zaka Jacob. The war between Israel and Hamas has taken a grave turn. There are now reports that Hamas has killed babies in many Israeli kibbutzes. Even Prime Minister Netanyahu has tweeted an image of a blood-stained crib saying that Hamas is worse than ISIS. Now, if these claims are true, and CNN News 18 cannot independently verify these because our reporters on ground do not have access to independently verify these claims. But if indeed these are true, then is there any justification for what Hamas has done? Is there any sense in saying that Israel should follow restraint when clearly the other side, which is Hamas, which started this terror attack, is not even sparing infants or children? That's what we'll debate. We'll have a special panel tonight. But first, I want to bring you up to speed with what has happened through the course of the last 24 hours.
On our way to Tel Aviv, and as you can see, sirens sounding, and we got an alert on the radio and on our phones, warning of a rocket attack.
ये एस्थेलॉन की एक जगह है, मुख्य रास्ता है, और यहाँ कल मिसाइल हमला हुआ था और देख सकते हैं तस्वीरें, कार के परखच्चे उड़ गए हैं, ये देख सकते हैं तस्वीरें.
You see the babies, the mother, the father in the bedrooms, in the protection rooms, and how the terrorists kill them. It's not a war. It's not a battlefield. It's a massacre. It's a terror activity.
The savage attacks that Hamas perpetrated against innocent Israelis are mind-boggling. Slaughtering families in their homes, massacring hundreds of young people at an outdoor festival, kidnapping scores of women, children, and elderly, even Holocaust survivors. But though Israel didn't start this war, Israel will finish it.
So in this moment, we must be crystal clear. We stand with Israel.
And just as a human being, to see and to know what happened here. Been here, we've seen it, and it is evil. And we stand with Israel, all of us.
All right, so what exactly is Israel's game plan here? Right now, it's airstrikes, massive airstrikes. More than 200 different places have been targeted in the last 24 hours in the Gaza Strip. But what is the game plan thereafter? There is a ground invasion strategy that's being put into place. Troops have been amassed for a possible invasion, for a possible ground operation. More than 300,000 reservists have been called in. It could also result in house-to-house urban warfare, because one of the claims Israel's been making is that Hamas uses human shields, civilians as human shields. Expanding mobilization. Right now, like I said, it's about airstrikes and some of the bases that have been built near Gaza. 300,000 reservists have been mobilized, indicating that this is going to be a long-haul ground operation. Meanwhile, choking off the Gaza Strip, there's a blockade. There was a blockade even before this happened, but now they've enforced a further blockade, a siege, if you will. No electricity, no food, no essentials going into Gaza or out of it. The force for deterrence. Now, this is what Netanyahu said in his very first speech after Saturday's attack, that the cost of deterrence should be raised high for the enemy. So there could be a scorched earth plan to ensure that Hamas does not have the capabilities to try and launch any future attacks. Also destroying Hamas's infrastructure, the assets, physical assets, human assets that it's created, the rocket launching sites, etc., to be completely neutralized, so that to cripple Hamas's entire network. And no long-term presence of any kind of position or ground occupancy, if you will, of Gaza. The diplomatic offensive, of course, and we're already seeing this. We're seeing this from Western countries, from the United States. There seems to be, at least within the Western countries, a sort of consensus against Hamas terror and its backers. the Middle East, of course, is divided between supporting Palestine and the cause of Palestine and, of course, not being able to back what happened on Saturday. Meanwhile, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and the centrist opposition leader Benny Gantz have agreed to form an emergency unity government. Netanyahu and Gantz, a former defense minister and also a military chief, have agreed to form a war cabinet. The joint statement said that the unity government will not promote any policy or laws except those related to the ongoing conflict with Hamas. Netanyahu has vowed to obliterate Hamas. I want to first go across to CNN correspondent Rafael Romo, who's now joining us live from Tel Aviv. The first things first, tell us a little bit more about this wartime cabinet, this new national unity government. How has it come about and what was the need for it?
Well, what happens here is that the most influential political leaders here in Israel have come together to come up with a plan so that the government can continue to function and focus on the main priority for Israel right now, which is to focus on the war and what Israel needs to do to make sure that they decimate Hamas, especially its military arm. And there will be no changes to law, no new laws will be approved, and that is the focus right now. How can they work together? Because as you know, especially over the last few months with the protests against the judicial reform and the protests against the government, it was the government at times appeared to be paralyzed. So no more of that. It's a government that's going to unify behind one single goal, which is to act against Hamas and what's going to happen to especially their military arm in the near future. And as you said, the Israeli military appears to be getting ready for a ground incursion in Gaza with as many as 300,000 members of its military and also reservists who are getting ready for what appears to be what you just described, going by ground and trying to capture the last remaining forces of Hamas within Gaza.
Quickly, Rafael, there's been a lot of back and forth, a lot of confusion around this assertion, this claim, which initially started off in Israeli media reports that babies were killed. Subsequently, we've seen tweets even from the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu showing a blood-stained crib. Is there any clarity on that?
Yeah, that is true, and this is actually very difficult to talk about, but the Israeli military said that at least in one location that they've been able to go to, they have found evidence that indeed, like you said, babies were decapitated. And in a phone call that between Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and President Biden, the footage was made available by the Israeli government. Netanyahu said that this can only be compared to what happened in the Holocaust. He said that not only grown men, but also women and children were massacred, were murdered. He was talking about all kinds of atrocities committed by the Hamas militants. And as you can imagine, there's a lot of outrage, anger in Israel about what happened. And that's the reason why you see the focus, the mission that it is to decimate, to annihilate Hamas militants. And the reason why you see 300,000 members of Israel's military amass all of the military equipment, tanks and armored vehicles, getting ready for that, what appears to be a ground operation in the next few hours or days.
Rafael Romo, many thanks for joining us, CNN correspondent live for us tonight from Tel Aviv. I want to now open this up to our panelists who are joining us. Flor Hassan Nahum is the Deputy Mayor of the city of Jerusalem. Dr. Emmanuel Navon is a political scientist who is also joining us from Jerusalem. Calev Ben David is an Israeli journalist from Tel Aviv. Dr. Vijay Chattawale is BJP Foreign Affairs Department head, and Dilip Sinha, former diplomat, will also be joining us. Let me start with Flor Hassan Nahum. You know, there have been conflicting reports about babies being killed. Even the Israeli Prime Minister put out a tweet showing a blood-stained crib. Can you tell us from what you've seen or what members of your team, your government have seen, either in Jerusalem or in surrounding areas, is there evidence of young children being butchered in a way that makes any normal human being's blood curdle? What is the situation on the ground as it exists today, 4 days since the world was completely engrossed by what happened, those dramatic and brutal attacks carried out against Israeli civilians?
I find that question a little bit hard, to be honest, because we've seen enough evidence of a massacre of young people, of elderly people, of babies. What are you looking for? We've seen horrible videos that I can't even look at because it's going to traumatize me for life. You need numbers. You need to see the heads decapitated. It's a kind of a very difficult question. What is the evidence? The evidence is that the army have found 40 infants dead, some of them decapitated. I mean, are we supposed to be showing a video so that you can believe us? This has been confirmed. This has been a massacre.
The reason I asked you that, ma'am, with due respect, because you questioned me, the reason I asked you that,
let me tell you why I'm angry about this.
Can I finish, please?
Let me tell you why I'm angry about this question. We know women have been raped.
I don't think anger is getting us
anywhere. We know women have been raped, and people keep asking me for evidence of rape.
I'm not asking you for evidence. That was not my question. I think you've misunderstood me. The reason I asked you that, is because the IDF had put out an official statement saying that they have no proof of such a thing happening after the media reports had come out, which is why I asked you that question.
That is not correct. There's been no statement from the IDF.
I'm asking Flower Hassan Nahum.
Okay.
I've seen statements from the IDF. I've seen videos of the IDF taking journalists down there who haven't been able to sleep with the carnage that they've seen. But let me tell you why this question kind of hit me a little sensitive, and I'm sorry if I overreacted. We know and we have stories and evidence of women being raped in Gaza. And people keep asking me, I want to see the evidence of rape. Really? Do we have to prove that there's been a massacre? We have enough proof that this has been barbaric, this has been unprecedented, that even ISIS look normal compared to the savagery that we've seen. Enough. We have evidence of a massacre. We have too much evidence of a massacre. Nobody wants to see the images anymore. It's so horrible. It's so horrific. And so at this point, what we have to discuss is what happened, why this happened, and how we uproot the worst type of terrorism and complete toxic regime that wants to destroy the Western world. That's the question. And this is what we should be talking about
Dr.
right
Emmanuel
now.
Navon, part of those questions as to what happened and why it happened also rests on why such a large-scale attack was not, there was no intelligence about it, or at least the intelligence was not taken seriously enough. Mr. Netanyahu has been in this political quagmire for the better part of the last 8 months. Many are saying that distracted him, his government, and people who were responsible for the security of Israeli citizens away from that task because of this political quagmire. Aren't those questions that are valid and need to be asked, and ordinary civilians in Israel are also asking at this difficult time?
So I just
those questions,
Dr. Emmanuel, thank you.
Those questions will be asked and answered after the war. Definitely, there will be an inquiry commission, and the politicians who have led us to this catastrophe will have to pay a price. But this is not the point right now. Right now, we're fighting back. Right now, we have to win a war. Right now, we have to defeat Hamas, which committed unheard of war crimes and barbaric terrorism within Israel. As we're speaking, a unity government or an emergency government has been formed between the coalition and part of the opposition. All Israelis right now are fighting together. Definitely, questions will be asked and will have to be answered, but after the war.
Okay. Let me also go across to Dr. Vijay Chautawale. This is terrorism, period, no doubt about it. Every sane human being was appalled by the kind of scenes that we saw on Saturday, where innocent civilians, women, children, elderly were targeted. There can be absolutely no justification for that. What then explains, though, the kind of divided response that we've seen from the world over, particularly from the Arab world, where they are again trying to bring and conflate two separate issues. One is the terrorism that we saw on Saturday and what response that should deserve, and two, people saying that this has to go back to the root question?
No, absolutely. These two are totally unrelated. No one is saying that the Palestinians have a right to have a state. India has supported their just demand, but that doesn't give an excuse for such a barbaric attack on innocent civilians, the women and the children, which Hamas has shown in last 3 days ago. So I don't think connecting these two issues are actually deviating from the root issue which entire world is facing, is that the terrorism and the brutality of Hamas, and the entire world needs to unequivocally, without any ifs and buts, without any caveats, without any qualification, should condemn it. What India has done, Indian Prime Minister has done, and most of the Indians are therefore supporting Israel at this stage, and all these questions can be answered and discussed at some later date.
Caleb Ben David, the reason why that question is being asked is clearly Israel is well within its right to respond in a manner in which it chooses, but even its staunchest allies, including the United States, and senior officials have said this on record today, that through the course of this operation, they expect Israel to maintain the laws of war, that there is a distinction between civilians and combatants, and that you cannot target one in the name of the other. The challenge before Israel is how do you, and rightfully so, like I said, Hamas needs to be attacked, Hamas infrastructure needs to be attacked, but how do you take on an enemy who takes cover behind civilians? And Israel runs the risk of collateral damage to the tune of tens of thousands, because it's a small enclave of 2 million plus people.
I'm going to answer that. First, I do want to just, with all due respect, to correct you. There was no IDF statement contradicting the reporting that initially was done by our reporter from I-24 News down at Far Aga. IDF officials have since confirmed it. There have actually been no conflicting reports. There have been people on Twitter saying Hamas doesn't kill women and children, which is, of course, absurd. So this is established. You could reference some of the own reporting done by Nick Robinson of CNN. So I just want to make, I do want to make that clear. We are limited, of course, to what we can show on television, but you can go on social media and see the atrocities that are being committed. So I just do want to make that clear. To answer your question, it is a hard question. Unfortunately, for Israel to root out Hamas, there are going to be civilian casualties, but Israel is not targeting those civilians. This is Hamas using those civilians as human shield. It's regrettable. My father fought in World War II on the side of the United States, and I hate to say, many Germans and Japanese civilians were killed as the United States fought that war. There is sometimes that collateral damage when you're fighting an enemy who is ruthlessly using civilians as human shields. I can only tell you, based on my experience as a journalist and as someone who served in also the Israeli Defense Forces, they will make to kill civilians. But I'm not saying that it's not impossible that that fighting an enemy like Hamas, that would become almost impossible to do. And I regret that. And Israelis will regret that. They will not celebrate it. But it will be a dilemma. I don't deny that. As the war goes on, Israel might come under international pressure. But its goal is, I would say, liberation, to liberate Gaza from Hamas, because the 1.5 million Palestinians there have been basically held hostage from Hamas since it took over that area in a violent takeover from the Fatah movement.
No, but I want to come back to that point that you made. I mean, yes, liberation of Gaza from Hamas. How did that come about? Hamas came about because after 2005-06, after the last major clash that we saw in Gaza, Israel walked away. There was a political vacuum. The promises that were kept as part of the Oslo Accords were not kept.
Right.
So isn't that a fair question? No, can I just finish, please? 30 seconds.
Sure.
Isn't it a fair question to ask that if the political vacuum at the end of that operation was occupied by Hamas, And then I'm not holding the brief for this violent terrorist organization for even a moment, but shouldn't a question also be asked as to why that political vacuum was left behind, and B, what happens to all those promises that were unkept to the so-called moderate faction, which led to the creation of this more extremist faction?
I will answer that question because I covered all those events as a journalist here in Israel. Israel withdrew, as you say, all its forces and 9,000 civilians from Gaza in 2005. An election was then held the next year in which Fatah won, and Israel was pressured by Europe and the United States to allow Hamas to take part in that election. I have to remind, there was an election in Gaza. Following that election, in which Hamas did achieve something of a majority in the one representative body, it entered into a joint government with the Fatah movement that still controls Palestinian areas in the West Bank. In 2007, Hamas had a violent takeover of the Gaza Strip from the Fatah movement, a point which they killed many members and officials from Fatah. They literally threw them off the tops of buildings. So you're incorrect. There was a political process. Israel really did hope that it would establish, there would be some kind of political entity similar to what is now still exists in the Palestinian areas in the West Bank, would be established in Gaza. But Hamas took it over in a violent takeover. That's how that situation came about.
So Flower Hassan Nahum, so then what is the game plan now? You have airstrikes very soon. There will be a ground operation. The troops might hold the ground for some time. But thereafter what? I mean, what is the objective here? Destroying Hamas is one thing, and perhaps rightfully so, especially after what happened over the weekend. That was the last straw. But after destroying Hamas, then what?
Well, first of all, we have to root out the terrorist infrastructure. Ultimately, you can't have a bordering country because, as Kalev said, we withdrew completely and there was no vacuum. Kalev is completely right. There was a process. Hamas took over. And in general, the Palestinians had a choice. They could have turned the Gaza Strip into Dubai, and instead they turned it into Beirut by allying themselves with the worst genocidal regimes in the world. One of them, of course, is Iran. Hamas is a proxy of Iran, as is Hezbollah. And so the question really is for Israel, but it's also for the entire world. What is it that we want when we have a genocidal regime that basically tells us constantly that they want to turn the world into and bring us back 500 years and turn the world into an entire caliphate? So it shouldn't just be seen as our problem because it's a regional and a global problem. And so this is why the world has to stand with Israel, because we are the first stop in the ambitions of these genocidal regimes in order to take over first the region and then the world. And so maybe I sound hyperbolic, but this is what they say themselves. And suddenly the Iranian regime constantly are repeating this rhetoric. And so what Israel has to do is uproot the terrorist infrastructure and cut the head of the snake, which is Hamas, and give the Palestinian people a chance perhaps to have leadership that care about them, that want their prosperity, that want peace, and that want to be good neighbors with Israel. That would really be the best scenario. Is it going to happen quickly? I don't know. To the Palestinian Authority perhaps could be involved in the next stage of the process because they were brutally kicked out of the Gaza Strip, perhaps. But these are questions that will become clearer, and the answers will become clearer as the weeks go on.
But Dr. Emmanuel Nevon, one of the problems therein is this whole hand of Iran. Yes, many Israelis, including Flower Hassan Nahum, are well within their right to believe that this whole thing was done at the behest of Iran, or Iran is the puppeteer that's controlling the strings. But at least as far as this attack is concerned, neither Israeli officials nor American officials have seen hard evidence of the Iranian hand. But if they do, then what happens? Is Israel going to attack Iran? Is Israel going to attack Lebanon and Hezbollah? Is this going to be a three-front war? What are we looking at?
First of all, it is not a matter of opinion. It is a matter of fact that Iran is a destabilizing factor in the region, has been supporting Hamas and Hezbollah militarily, financially, and logistically. In fact, the Hamas terrorists themselves recognized that they had received the support of Iran. So this is not some kind of theory or opinion. It is a fact.
I said, as far as this attack is concerned. That's what I said.
Well,
what I said was, as far as this attack is concerned, neither Israeli
Right.
officials nor American officials have found evidence of it. But presume they find it. Then what happens?
Well, why do you think the United States has sent warships in the region and two major warships in the region? It's to send a message to whom? To Hezbollah and to Iran. And President Biden was very clear in his speech yesterday, warning Iran, don't you even dare to open another front in the north of Israel, because everybody knows who is behind those forces. It is Iran. Now, it might be that Iran calculated that the time was right for it to open a total war in the region. But of course, Iran, if it makes that decision, will be faced with the whole might of the IDF and also probably of the United States. And this way, it will not only be Hamas, but also Iran that will be taught a lesson that they and the world will never forget.
All right. Dr. Vijay Chautawale, I'll give you the final word. Just curious to know, yes, India has come out and taken a very, very strong position in favor of Israel, in favor of the innocent victims of terror. But at the same time, India has been developing very deep linkages in the wider Arab world, whether it's with the UAE, Saudi Arabia, and other countries. In fact, many of these initiatives, projects that have been announced, I2U2, the IMEC, all depend on cooperation with these Arab countries. What happens to that now, Dr. Chautawale?
I don't see these long-term projects will have any significant impact. There may be some delays here and there, but even the statements coming out of our friendly Arab country, many of them, they are consistent with India's stance. The narrative might be slightly milder, but overall stand remains same. And I am very confident that all these treaties and long-term plans with the Arab countries, where Israel is also part of some of those plans, will continue in future with a new vigor once the situation is improved.
All right, Caleb Ben David, what are you hearing on the ground from officials that you speak to, from members of government that you speak to? How long does Israel intend to keep this counteroffensive going? And again, I come back to that question, what is the objective here? Yes, Hamas's destruction, its ability to carry out terror attacks on Israel, those are the immediate objectives. But how are they going to achieve that?
Well, unfortunately, no one's giving a time frame for this, but the goal is to reduce Hamas's military capability. There was talk even going back, I remember 15 years after Hamas took power, about a demilitarization of the Gaza Strip, meaning taking away both weapons and the military capability. I agree that when the fighting is done, and it's going to take a while, it may be, as you talked about house to house, I don't in any way soften that assessment. There will have to be some kind of political reckoning, political horizon for Gaza. I think Flor said it could involve the Palestinian Authority. Maybe it'll involve some Arab nations. Some of these nations, like the UAE and the Gulf states, that have been very quite involved in providing financial and other aid into Gaza. There are some elements, Palestinian elements, opposed to Hamas that are even allied with, for example, the UAE. So we might see new territory, political ground broken in the aftermath. But in the meantime, yes, Israel's going to a ground operation most likely. I imagine it will take quite a bit of time, and we'll just have to see how it develops from there.
All right, I want to thank all our guests. We'll see how this plays out. Like the Prime Minister said, I think almost all Indians, whether on social media or otherwise, who've been completely stunned by the pictures of Saturday, are standing with the people of Israel, with the innocent victims of terror. Clearly, the objective for Israel is to try and go in and neutralize Hamas and its ability to carry out attacks on Israeli civilians. But thereafter, whether it's 3 months or 6 months or whatever, however long that process takes, thereafter the question will have to be addressed. After Hamas, what? What is this that they're going to fill that political vacuum with? Is it going to be Fatah? Is it going to be a new entity altogether? And how does one break out of this cycle of violence? We'll leave it at that. Thank you very much for tuning in. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back on the other side, it's the second win for Team India in the Cricket World Cup, the one-day World Cup that's going on. An emphatic win against the Afghanistan team. We'll have details of that right on the other side with my colleague Shivani Gupta.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks a lot for staying with us. You're watching Kings of Cricket with me, Shivani Gupta, and it has been another consummate win for India. Of course, it wasn't going to be a big battle to begin with, but there is of course a total that was on board and India had to chase it down. A century by Rohit Sharma that has broken a lot of records. We'll get to that in just a bit. A half century not out by Virat Kohli yet again, and some runs by Ishan Kishan at the top of the order. India winning comfortably against Afghanistan by 8 wickets. Put into chase first, put into bowl first and chasing in this match. Remember, this is the Arun Jaitley Stadium in the national capital where over 750 runs were scored last time. It wasn't that high scoring a game, and we'll get to that also in just a bit. Just why the Afghanistanis could not go beyond, let's say, that mark of 300 in this game. I will be joined by our expert panel in just a bit. But first up, let me go across to Yash Goyal, my colleague, who's joining us with some elated fans outside the Arun Jaitley Stadium. Yash, 2 wins in a row for India now.
Well, absolutely, Shivani, and you can see the mood is absolutely electrifying over here. Fans going gaga after spectacular win by the team India. In fact, boys in blue, let's directly go to the people out here because it's their victory, it's their match. In fact, one by one we'll take voices from the ground. कितनी बड़ी जीत है टीम इंडिया के लिए. बहुत बड़ी जीत है. इतनी बड़ी जीत कभी नहीं देखी थी. बहुत मजा आया. विराट कोहली को लाइव बैटिंग करके आज रोहित शर्मा ने भी बड़े रन बनाए. बहुत टाइम से बात थी रोहित शर्मा नहीं कर रहे परफॉर्म. आज सब जवाब दे दिया.
रोहित शर्मा के पुल शॉट वाज ट्रीट टू वॉच. मतलब रोहित शर्मा से अच्छा पुल शॉट दुनिया में कोई नहीं खेलता.
इस बार वर्ल्ड कप हम ही लेके जाएंगे. एक चीज और पूछना चाहूंगा. एक चीज और टीम इंडिया पहले मैच में देखा बैटिंग शानदार, बॉलिंग शानदार. इस बार भी बैटिंग बॉलिंग दोनों शानदार. और सोने पे सुहागा क्या फील्डिंग. क्या बोलेंगे इंडियन फील्डिंग के बारे में.
पाकिस्तान को 14 तारीख को पाकिस्तान को छठी का दूध याद दिला देंगे.
रोहित शर्मा ने लटका दिया. यो लट फाइनल वाला दिन पट्टागा. Shivani, you can sense the kind of over here outside Arun Jaitley Stadium. Fans absolutely going gaga. We have so many of them. There is no going back for Team India from now, from here. In fact, praises are all here for Rohit Sharma, Virat Kohli, for the entire Team India. You can see, I can barely say something because I understand this is their day. In fact, this is what Team India is doing. In fact, the mood is absolutely electrifying over here.
Absolutely. Well, I can't blame these fans because it's been 2 brilliant performances by the Indian team, and so many positives really coming in, not just from that win against Australia in the first game, but also even in this game, so much to look forward to. Let's take that to our experts joining us. Murli Karthik, former India cricketer, is with me in the studio. So is Group Consulting Sports Editor K. Srinivas Rao. Venkatesh Prasad and Mohinder Amanath are also joining us. And with us is also Ayaz Memon, Indian sports writer and commentator. Karthik, let me start with you. Many positives from this match, but of course, let's begin by talking about Rohit Sharma. He has now become the person to have most centuries in a World Cup. He's obviously done that in just 3 World Cups, and that's kind of a record that is, something that can have a lot of longevity actually. And this World Cup is only just starting for him.
Yeah, 100%. He's got 8 more games, and he's always been elegance personified.
Yeah.
And I always say this: even if he gets a duck, there's a style to it. He doesn't make ugly runs. He just looks so pleasing to the eye. He's just beautiful to watch. And seriously, you don't get a feeling that he's actually hitting a ball in anger. You never get that feeling. Very easy to watch, a joy, treat for everyone. And sometimes the way he moves through gears, it's just like a Rolls Royce. You don't even know that he's on overdrive, and he's literally scoring at breakneck speed. So
so this is most runs in power play for India in an ODI match. That just goes on to show that once you let Rohit Sharma get in, he can actually accelerate and take the match away from you very quickly.
Yeah, easily done. That's why I'm saying that you don't see. Last match was a different one. He just got a good ball on a tricky surface up front, and anybody can get out. But this time around, he was like a man possessed, and 500s in 2019 in England. And as you said, it's just the second game, and he has made up for what happened from the previous game. And it's also good to see that Bumrah was amongst wickets. Ishan Kishan got a look in. He played the ideal foil to somebody who got off to a rampaging start. So it was just a job well done. The only thing which India might look at, and I'm just saying if you have to be extremely
really
nitpicky about it, is that you're world number 1 in all formats. And why did you allow a 164-run partnership? Could you have done something different? That's
Especially
the only
against
thing.
a side like this?
That's the only thing. Yeah, absolutely. Because Venkatesh Prasad said this, everybody's been saying it. There is no comparison between the two sides. One is a heavyweight. One is a heavyweight.
So not quite a dominating win in that sense, in the sense that the Afghanistanis did manage to put on a score that should be maybe considered a little bit higher.
Look, it's a convincing win. At the end of the day, they have also come here to play.
It was convincing, of course, in the batting, but you know.
No, I'm saying they've also come here to play. So you would expect that they get at least 270 runs.
Fair enough. No, but I just want to concentrate on Rohit Sharma a little bit more because there are more records to talk about. It's a strange one, but Rohit's 79 is the most runs scored by one player out of the first 100 scored by their team, either in men's and women's World Cups. Previously, this record was held, which was 76 by McCullum versus England in 2015, and there was Davison for Canada versus West Indies in 2003. This is, a stat going out for the stats nerds there. But, Jimmy Paji, I'm coming to you on Rohit Sharma. Most hundreds in a World Cup, the fastest 100 by an Indian in a World Cup, most sixes by an Indian in World Cup, most sixes in international cricket, most runs in power play for India in ODIs.
So it's all in one package, to be very honest, really. He has done it in the past. I think if you go through the record, I think we have to probably carry on with that whole thing in this program. I think that even that will be short time to talk about that. But he's a fantastic player. Once he gets going, I think you can't just restrict him because he's an all-round player, both against spin and pace. And especially playing in India, I think the bounce of the wicket suits him very well. Wherever I think slightly lower bounce, probably he can really control the game and take the game away. I think the only thing probably I feel sometimes he get hesitant, if you see his dismissal, is that mostly he's into incoming deliveries. And whether it's a left armer or a right armer in the beginning of the inning. And if he just pass that 5-10 minutes kind of at the crease, and then he's a different player altogether. Maybe I think sometimes he has to make a little bit adjustment as far as the wicket is concerned. And like Virat Kohli, probably sometimes I feel that the ball is moving early in the inning, I think he has to really stand outside the cricket a little bit more to cut that swing. So I'm sure like he's an experienced player, he knows what he's doing, but it's always a pleasure to watch him bat.
Yes. I remember that Rohit Sharma had said before the start of the first match that, the World Cup is the biggest stage for you. Unless you win a World Cup, which Jimmy Paji has done, it is unfinished business for you. And he was really looking forward to contribute as a batsman. He said, I just want to do whatever I can do for my team at that top order. And I think he's really wanting to make this one count. So good on him. Venki, I want to come to you as well. Let's not forget how well Bumrah did in this match. He would have also been possibly a joint contender for man of the match, just the way he bowled. He showed just why he's the best in the world.
Absolutely. I think Bumrah, Shivani just, sticks to a fantastic line and length. It's more of a test match line and length that he bowls, and he doesn't experiment a bit too much. Unless a change of pace or a Yorker that do it in the death overs. Otherwise, he just sticks to bowling that off stump outside the off stump that's on the fourth stump and hit the good length to back off length, and it doesn't do much. And of course, the first wicket that he got was something similar to Mitchell Marsh's wicket, which was of course caught by Virat Kohli at first slip, but then this was taken by KL Rahul. The one with the angle, it just comes in with the angle, and once it pitches, it just tends to straighten. It doesn't come in the way the batter is expecting. So that's where he's getting those outside edges. I think it's fantastic. Doesn't he knows his strength, and you don't have to do too much of or vary too many things like most bowlers do, whether it's Bumrah or a Shami for that matter. They just stick to that off stump line and off. Having said that, anyway, getting back to Rohit, I think we were talking about Rohit. You also said about unfinished business, winning this World Cup. Yes, he was part of the Under-19 World Cup when I was coach as well. So there as well, we lost to Pakistan in the finals, which we should have won. So that was unfinished. I hope he finishes off here. But looking at Rohit, always he had that lazy sort of an elegance. It looked lazy. He had a lot of time. I go back to Mark Waugh's batting. He was something, he used to play something similar to Mark Waugh, Rohit Sharma. So he has got a lot of time on the back foot, waits for the ball to come, no matter how quick the bowler is bowling at him. 140s, high 140s also. He's got a lot of time compared to the other batters. I think so. That is fantastic to watch him. And if you have to get him out, you have to get him out in the first, say, 15, 20 runs, especially in the subcontinent. Otherwise, the moment he gets stuck, I'm telling you, it is very, very difficult to get him out.
Absolutely. That's been a feature actually throughout his career. He's very difficult to get out once he gets set, and he also has a tendency to make it big then, which is why he's already the highest century scorer in World Cups. I want to quickly talk about spinners who did a really good job for us today. Of course, Shardul Thakur came in for this match. I'll take Murli's opinion, Karthik's opinion on that. But very quickly, Venki, is Pandya's bowling a concern at all?
Well, I don't think so. They've got good depth, and Pandya for me as a batter is more important than his bowling. And if he can give, say, about 5 overs, I think that's fantastic. So as a sixth bowler, so you already got 5 bowlers who are doing extremely well. And you've got Ashwin in the bench. You've got sixth option if Hardik can give, say, about 5 overs. I think that's fantastic. And on his day, if he gets a wicket or two, he can be really good. He can break partnerships. He can bowl those 8 to 10 overs, his full quota of overs as well. So I think Hardik, I've got no issues.
No worries with him. Okay.
With Hardik's bowling or batting as well.
You were mentioning earlier when Shardul Thakur came in, we were wondering whether he will or, we'll go with Shami. You raised the concern about his economy rate. Today, of course, it was very much under check. He did well for that situation, isn't it?
Look, I'm not saying that he goes for runs every time, but he's got the tendency to leak runs. And there are times where when you've got 2 bowlers who have bowled a terrific opening spell and then you want that pressure cooker to continue, sometimes that gets opened. So that is the only criticism, so to say, but one of the reasons he's there is because of his ability to take wickets and also his contributions with the bat. The only question is, which is something which me and Srini will ask again and again, you can understand going for him in that playing 11. I'm not talking about the 15. In the playing 11, if there is no Ravindra Jadeja or no Hardik Pandya. But if you've got batting till 7 or 8 and someone like Kuldeep Yadav can hold a bat, so why him instead of someone like Mohammad Shami, who's just picked up 5 wickets and who's somebody who can get you wickets even on a flat track. So that's the only question. I'm not saying why is he playing or why is he not playing.
Yeah, sure. No, we understand what you're saying, and of course that's an answer only the team management can give, Srini, isn't it? Either Rohit Sharma or Rahul Dravid can give us that answer. We'll try and ask them next time when I'm in that press conference. But the spinners also did a really good job of keeping it tight after that opening spell.
Oh yes, Kuldeep Yadav will gain a lot. So I have always believed that with Kuldeep, my fear was going into a tournament like this one, we all knew that he's going to be such an important bowler for us. But then the fear was that the rest of some of the teams that were coming into the tournament like this, like, Australia, South Africa, they've been among runs. Look at the ODI series that they've played. Every second innings bilateral was 350 plus, So coming with that kind of form, running into a Kuldeep Yadav, the one fear that I had was, he has one bad day out there, 2 bad days out there, and that whole rhythm goes for a toss. But today, I'm thinking that with the spell that he bowled, what kind of confidence is Kuldeep going to walk away?
Sure.
On a track like this, with this thing. So, yes, Rohit Sharma, great knock, awesome. But man of the match for me, Jasprit Bumrah. And then Kuldeep Yadav in that order. That's it.
I'm going to keep the conversation of whether bowlers tend to lose out to batsmen when it comes to man of the match performances. But we don't have enough time for that because I know all of my panelists will have a lot of opinions on that. We'll keep that for another day. I want to come to you as well. The other big positive for India is you watch Virat Kohli, you know he's in good nick. And that is such brilliant news for us.
Oh, absolutely. I think in this year, this 2023, just turned things around so completely and comprehensively in test matches, in T20, and in ODIs. After a barren, almost 3-year barren spell, a lot of careers would have ended there. But he's come back with a lot of vigor and a lot of strength. I think mental toughness makes a big difference. He's had to kind of be at the shallow end for a long while, and he realized that's not the end he belongs to. He needs to be where the action is. And I think that his form, along with Rohit getting runs now, so too Ishan Kishan, this Indian team is looking so formidable. I mean, the virtues of Bumrah and Kuldeep have been espoused by Karthik and Srini. I think the bowling unit collectively, as well as the batting unit, I don't see on paper, a challenge to the Indian team. Now, the obvious thing is that this form needs to be sustained. It's a 6-week-long tournament. It's not a 1-week-long tournament. And that's really the challenge that India has.
And next one is the big one, isn't it? I'll take some closing comments in just a bit. Yes, right.
The thing about Virat, as I was answering, it just occurred to me. Virat, of course, the batsman, is a kind of form, back among runs. And Virat, the friend, everybody's friend. He's like, look at the majority, the crowd was, kind of pointing out at Naveen ul Haq, and this guy went and this is the second time he did it. He did it for Steve Smith, and he went and that shows class. That shows.
No, obviously he's been there and done
Virat
that.
Kohli Pavilion, adds a bit of charm to it.
Yeah, but I do want to ask, from Afghanistan's point of view, Karthik, did they miss a trick in not getting Rashid in earlier? Given that he's the one who ultimately did get wickets for them, and he is their wicket taker bowler.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think sometimes when you've got a new captain and in pressure cooker situations, I don't know whether it was a thing to get him on only after the power play. But if you're going for runs, if you've not made the initial breakthrough,
then it makes
wickets. Cricketing sense to get your trump card in, get your best bowler in.
Wouldn't somebody like Rashid go to his captain, even if he's a new captain, and say, boss, give me the ball?
You've got Mohammad Nabi, who's quite experienced as well, and who generally bowls the tough overs. Even he was not used for a long period of time. So I was a bit surprised with a few things, but they have taken 2 batterings. Actually, 2 hammerings in 2 games, so they'll have to come back really strong from here.
Yeah. All right. Like I said, we just had about, I think, 3 minutes. But Jimmy Paji, I'll take your opinion on this. The next one is the big one. I don't want to overemphasize it. Yes, you play 9 matches and you have to qualify for the semi-finals. But we all know the pressure is going to be very high. And you know a little bit about that. But the Indian team couldn't have had a better 2 matches to get into that match versus Pakistan.
Yeah, very true, Shivani. You said it all, and I think it's a good preparation to go for the big game. And I don't think they will think much about Pakistan. They played them on a number of occasions. They understand their strength, their weaknesses, their temperament. So I think it's the good thing, because they're playing in Ahmedabad. There'll be huge support for India. But end of the day, once you're in the middle, you forget everything. Your focus is to perform and do well and beat the opposition. Yeah, definitely it's a big game, but I'm hopeful this form and the way they're playing, they'll continue playing in the coming matches also.
Venki, I mean, Pakistan is Pakistan, right? They've always been bursting with talent, and we did have that one scare versus Pakistan in the recent Asia Cup, where we were like tottering against their bowling, and then we recovered in the next one. Could it be a surprise at all for us? Obviously, we can't predict anything, but Pakistan is a very dangerous side, isn't it?
Oh yeah, look, they are very unpredictable. So on their day, they can be really dangerous, Pakistan. But otherwise, look, there is going to be pressure, whether it's Pakistan or Australia or any other team for that matter. When you're playing for your country, when you're representing your country, when you're playing an international match, there is going to be pressure. You've got to handle that pressure. You've got to soak in that pressure. You've got to enjoy the challenges that is thrown at you. And I think at the moment, Indian team is in a very good situation, very good space, high in confidence. The batters are getting their runs. The bowlers are getting those, lines and lengths. Of course, it was an off day for Mohammad Siraj. But otherwise, all in all, I think the team looks fantastic, and they're gelling very well. They're playing extremely well. And maybe one change I might see again going into the next game. If the wicket is pretty much similar to what we saw here today at Delhi, when they play the next game at Ahmedabad, so probably they might get in Mohammad Shami in place of Shardul, I feel.
Well, might as well give it a try too, if that is what the thinking is before you get to the semis.
Look, I would pick Shami any day.
Yeah.
Because I am always been a believer that you don't like weaken your bowling at the cost of your batting. Always been the case. And again, you've got quality batters. Everybody, if people were not in form, you can understand having cover for cover. Over here, everybody is doing well. You actually cannot find any chink in this 15. So why would you try? You always want to bolster your bowling. You want to make sure that you've got all bases covered. And someone like Shami is an all-track bowler. Like you talk about Bumrah, Shami is the same. So I would always pick him. But I suppose we are sitting here and giving the gyan rather than being part of the team.
We're not the decision makers at all. But I've run out of time completely. I do thank all of our guests and experts for joining us. Remember, as I said, the big one is coming. And over the next few days, we will be building up to that big match with all of our experts, the best expert panel anywhere on Indian television. Many thanks, gentlemen, and thanks a lot for watching.
Co-presented by
Saturday's attack by Hamas marked the worst breach in Israel's defenses in decades. According to a Reuters source, Hamas deployed a force of about 1,000 fighters, organized into specialized units. They've been training in Gaza since the last conflict in 2021, sometimes in plain sight, the source said. Here's how they managed to catch Israel off guard. This footage released by the armed wing of Hamas is said to show fighters training ahead of the operation. They're using paragliders, and a source says their exercises included building a mock Israeli settlement to practice a military landing. Reuters could not verify the date and locations of the videos, but the training would have come amid a careful campaign of deception by Hamas, which had convinced Israel that it did not want to fight. It refrained from military operations against Israel and was careful about leaks. Even many Hamas leaders weren't aware of the plans, according to the Reuters source. A spokesperson for the Israeli Defense Forces admits they were surprised. Hamas separated its fighters into several specialized groups to carry out the attack in the air and on the ground. It fired thousands of rockets at around 6:30 a.m. on Saturday. The bombardment was intended to cause shock and confusion, while providing Hamas fighters with cover to break the fortified fence surrounding Gaza. Teams of fighters on hang gliders, or motorized paragliders, flew over the border and secured terrain for the main ground assault. A 400-strong elite force on the ground attacked the fortified Gaza fence. Videos issued by Hamas are said to show fighters breaching the security fences.
Hello and welcome to Vantage Israel edition. The war continues here, and so do the sirens and rocket strikes. And I must tell you, it's pretty unsettling when those sirens go off. It's your signal to take cover. Here in the cities, that often means bomb shelters. Most houses and establishments have a bomb shelter in Israel, a sort of underground bunker. Today, we visited this vast network. Stay tuned for that ground report.